Hello and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. Political novice Oleksiy Honcharuk was appointed as Ukraine's prime minister and said economic reforms aimed at accelerating growth would be the focus of his premiership. The new prime minister said that Ukraine would continue to cooperate with the IMF and start talks over a new program, which would replace an existing $3.9 billion standby deal in a few weeks. To discuss this and many more, we're joined in the studio today by Miklosh. He's a chairman of the Strategic Advisory Group for Supporting Ukrainian Reforms. Hello and thank you for joining.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
So President Zelensky has been in his administration for 100 days now. What's your evaluation of his success, achievements, or maybe failures?
I think what we see now in Ukraine is kind of miracle. Because if we remember how was situation 1 year ago, how big dissatisfaction of the people was, how relatively strong position of the populists were, at that time it was really kind of, people have been afraid what will be continuation of reforms after elections. Now what we can see after presidential elections and also after parliamentary elections, and yesterday it was confirmed by appointing the government, that Ukraine is really now going and will go much faster in reforms, hopefully, that it was creating a real window of opportunity to be successful and to use potential which a country has. I already said in the past that it is nice that Ukraine during last years achieved 2-3% economic growth, but I said already in the past that Ukraine has potential for much higher and sustainable growth around 6-7%. It is what was also declared yesterday by newly appointed prime minister, that it is the goal of his government, is create precondition for this kind of high and sustainable economic growth. And this is great. And what I know about people, I don't know all of them who have been appointed as members of the government, but I know at least those who are in the key positions, like Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Minister of Economy.
We'll concentrate on all of those figures a little later. For now, could you give an evaluation of the government, of the newly appointed government as the whole?
I think as a whole it is really good news. I don't see any kind of, especially if you are speaking about economic positions, All right,
let's concentrate on the economic positions.
Maybe what is pity that one of the most reform minister from previous government, Oleksiy is not continuing, because her reforms have been one of the most difficult, and she was really good reformer.
I think that Oleksiy was one of the most controversial ministerial figures in the Ukrainian politics.
But it's normal. It is, by the way, it is evidence that what she did were real reforms. Because if you are changing the system, especially a system which is very corrupt,
then there will be a lot of criticism.
Very sensitive, healthcare is sensitive in every country. It is normal.
Yeah, I agree. Now let's concentrate on the economic and financial positions. Now, the newly appointed government will include Oksana Markarova. She retained her post, and since 2015 she worked as deputy finance minister, and then last year she took the post of minister and negotiator with the International Monetary Fund. Also, we have Timofey Milovanov, who used to head Ukraine's Ministry of Economic Development and Trade. Now, those are new figures at the government, but those are not new figures in politics of Ukraine. What would your piece of advice be for those two newly appointed ministers on what kind of reforms they should concentrate on?
I know personally both of them. I started working in Ukraine in 2015 as advisor to Finance Minister Yarysko, and at that time Oksana Markarova was deputy minister of Mrs. Yarysko. And I know also Timofey Milovanov, which means they are very qualified, and it is very good news that they have been appointed on this post, because both of them, they know very well what to do. It will be much more important to have common effort of the government, and I'm sure that speaking about Prime Minister Honcharuk is the same. We can say that he really knows what to do. The most important will be to sustain good cooperation between president, presidential administration, government, and parliament. And the most important will be to sustain support in parliament, having majority support. Today, Sluga Naroda has big support, but we can expect that it will be not such easy to sustain this support for future, because of course they will have
What's the main challenge in sustaining the citizens, the voters' support?
Yeah, main challenge is that expectations of the voters are very different. Especially if president gain more than 70% of support, and we know what are public opinion polls in Ukraine regarding, for instance, wages, salaries, pensions, tariffs, which means, unfortunately, many of people, significant part of people, have unrealistic expectations. What government can do for them, for instance, reduce tariffs for gas and electricity, or increase wage for $1,000, or decrease pension age, which means the most important will be to do what is necessary to do. It is unrealistic to expect that this strong popularity will be sustained at all, but the biggest challenge will be to do what is necessary to do and lose at least possible, because it will be necessity decrease in the popularity and the support from people. And then in this regard, it will be also very important not what to do, but how to do this and how to communicate this, how to explain this, how to use every opportunity also to fight against populism and to demask populists, because they are not offering real solutions, and their proposals are really dangerous for the people, for the country, and especially for the poor people, people who are in worse situation.
Okay. Well, let's stay on the topic of reforms. President of World Bank, David Malpass, expressed optimism about Ukraine's reforms following meetings with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. And the first step is to attract greater investment. That was written by the President of World Bank for Financial Times. I quote here: Ukraine will need to allow market competition, eliminate monopolies, and strengthen the rule of law. He also went on to state that state-owned enterprises are present in almost 30 economic sectors in Ukraine. So what's this chance that Ukraine needs to seize in terms of reforms?
Yeah, it is. I very agree what President of the World Bank said. And by the way, newly appointed Prime Minister said the same. Yesterday, in his first speech, he said that the main goal is to have high growth, 5-6%, 6-7%. And he said that one of the biggest, most important precondition for this is to attract investment, especially foreign direct investment. And we all know that the biggest obstacle today is law enforcement and property right protection. Not only, also privatization. Privatization is a really good possibility how to attract this investment, because Ukraine still has a lot of state-owned companies which are ineffective, which are corrupted, and so on and so on. Which means this is chance. Now it is a real chance, because we knew it also during last 5 years. It was discussed again. But why it was not bigger progress? Something was achieved in macro stabilization, but especially if we are speaking about attracting FDIs, foreign direct investment, and if we are speaking about large-scale privatization, results were very, very low, very negligible.
What were the stumbling blocks?
The main reason behind this was that it was not strong enough political will. It was also vested interest, especially regarding state-owned companies. One of the obstacles previously was also very bad law, privatization law, but it was changed. Fortunately, it was changed during previous government and parliament. New law was approved, which is good, which now there is no kind of legislative obstacle to do this. And now, because it is clear that now political will exists, and also courage and effort to do this, and because we have good law now, I expect that we will see a real and quick progress in this regard. Land market reform is another example.
Yes, it has been announced that the moratorium on the sale of the farmland is going to be lifted as soon as by the end of the year. How realistic is that?
I think it is realistic. You know that we spoke about this all 5 years during previous government. It was in the program of the government. It was in the program with the IMF. Then it was removed from the IMF program, and it was postponed every year, the problem. Now I see real political will to do this, and hopefully it will be done.
Is there an opportunity to give a prospective, let's say, or maybe a forecast on where Ukraine is going to stand economically, let's say, a year from now with the new government?
Yeah, it is possible to say that during 1 year, it is possible create preconditions for this high growth, not next year, because it is next year we can expect that growth will be, even if you pass now legislation, there is some kind of postponement in a reaction of real economy, which means if everything will be done as it is planned, we can see real results in higher and more sustainable economic growth in 2, 3, 4 years. But this first 1 year will be the most important for creating this precondition, because if not, then we will not see these results later on. And it is possible to do. I like this if new politicians, new leaders are speaking about tiger. It is ambitious to create such economic, to do such reforms, to create new image of Ukraine, image of economic tiger, of very competitive economy which is attracting investment. This is something what we did in Slovakia. When we did these reforms in 2003, Slovakia was declared the most reformed country in the world. We prepared during 2003 package of complex reforms. Similarly, the new government has planned. And from 2004, 2005, we had highest, 2006, 2007, highest growth in all Europe. Which means it is chance, the most, reforms, these kind of reforms are not technical challenge. They are political challenge. And political preconditions have been created by presidential elections, by parliamentary elections, but by creating a government yesterday.
Well, you know what they say, when there is a will, there is a way. You've just said that we do have political will. Let's see what the ways are going to be when fulfilling the reforms and implementing them into real life and everyday life. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
That was Ivan Miklosh. He's the chairman of the Strategic Advisory Group for Supporting Ukrainian Reforms. Thank you so much for watching UATV. Stay tuned for the rest.